want to succeed, if you want to experience life at the highest level, if you want to break through the limitations that have held you back for years, you have to understand something fundamental about human behavior and human psychology. Success is not just about what you do. Success is just as much about what you stop doing. It's about identifying the patterns, the habits, the mental loops that rob you of energy, clarity, and drive. Because the truth is, you don't have unlimited time, you don't have unlimited focus, you don't have unlimited energy. You and I have the same 24 hours in a day as every billionaire, every world-class athlete, every transformational leader. The difference between those who succeed and those who stay stuck is not just discipline or talent. It's eliminating the things that drain you before they even get started. It's cutting off the poison at the root. Now, when we talk about stopping certain things, if you want to succeed, I don't mean little preferences. I don't mean quirks. I don't mean personality differences. I'm talking about behaviors and mindsets that are absolute anchors holding you underwater when you're trying to swim toward your vision. Imagine trying to run a marathon with a backpack full of rocks. You can have the best shoes, the best training, the best mindset, but if you don't take off the backpack, you're still dragging yourself down. Success becomes excruciating. And the tragic part is, many people never realize that the rocks they're carrying are self-imposed. They never realize that the things they need to stop doing are choices. Habits they've reinforced over and over until they feel automatic. But nothing about your life is permanent until you decide it is. You can change anything the moment you become conscious of it. The first thing most people need to stop is living in fear of failure. Fear of failure is the great immobilizer. It is the silent killer of dreams. It shows up in subtle ways: hesitation, procrastination, rationalizing why now isn't the right time. People tell themselves stories like, "I'm not ready yet," or "I'll do it when the kids are older," or "I'll wait until I have more money, more time, more connections." But underneath all of those excuses is one thing: fear of failing. And here's the paradox. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of success. Every person who has ever achieved anything extraordinary has failed more times than they've succeeded. Thomas Edison, when asked about his thousands of failed attempts at creating the light bulb, said, "I didn't fail 10,000 times. I successfully found 10,000 ways that didn't work." Walt Disney was fired from his first newspaper job for lacking imagination. Oprah was told she wasn't fit for television. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. The list is endless. The people we admire most are not the people who avoided failure, but the ones who stopped letting the fear of failure control them. Fear is not real in the sense that it has no substance until you give it attention. It's your brain projecting into the future something that hasn't happened yet. And because your brain is wired to protect you, it magnifies the possibility of pain. It convinces you that embarrassment, rejection, or a setback will destroy you. But let me tell you, rejection doesn't destroy you. Regret does. A setback doesn't destroy you. Settling does. Embarrassment doesn't destroy you. Self-betrayal does. The real cost of living in fear is not the failure itself. It's the life unlived, the potential untouched, the gifts buried because you never let them breathe. And here's what happens when you stop letting fear of failure dictate your choices. You free up all that trapped energy that's been sitting in anxiety, and you redirect it toward action. Action cures fear. The moment you take a step, even a small one, you shift your physiology, shift your psychology. You prove to yourself that you're capable. And that creates momentum. And momentum is the ultimate antidote to fear. Think about it. When a plane is on the runway, it takes an enormous amount of energy to get it moving, but once it's in the air, momentum carries it forward with far less effort. The same is true in your life. The hardest part is starting, but once you start, once you refuse to let fear be the driver, you gain altitude. You start to see what's possible from a higher perspective. Now, the second thing you need to stop if you want to succeed is seeking approval from others. This is one of the most insidious traps of human behavior because it feels natural. We are wired for connection. From the time you were a child, you learn that approval from your parents. Your teachers, your peers brought you love, attention, and validation. But what happens when that childhood pattern runs unchecked into adulthood is that you become addicted to external validation. You start making decisions not based on what's right for you, but based on how it will look to others. You live your life performing for an imaginary audience. You post not because you want to share your truth, but because you want likes. You choose a career not because it lights your soul on fire, but because it looks respectable. You hide your vulnerabilities not because you're ashamed, but because you're terrified of judgment. And all of this drains your energy because you're living out of alignment with your authentic self. Let me tell you something. Approval is a moving target. You can never hit it consistently because people's opinions are fickle. One day they'll cheer you, the next day they'll criticize you, and neither reaction has anything to do with your worth. If you base your identity on approval, you will forever be on an emotional roller coaster. True success, true fulfillment, comes when you stop chasing approval and start chasing alignment. When you do what you know in your heart is right, even if it's unpopular, even if it's misunderstood, even if it costs you short-term praise. History is filled with people who were ridiculed in their time and celebrated later because they had the courage to stand in their truth. When you stop seeking approval, you stop fragmenting yourself. You stop betraying your instincts just to fit in. And the beautiful irony is that the more authentic you become, the more people are drawn to you anyway. Because authenticity is magnetic. Think about the people you admire most. Are they the ones who conformed, who played it safe, who lived to please others? Or are they the ones who had the audacity to be themselves fully, unapologetically, and boldly? Every leader, every visionary, every revolutionary was at some point considered too much or too different or too radical. But they stopped needing everyone else's permission, and that's why they created change. The third thing you must stop if you want to succeed is making excuses. Excuses are the chains that keep you tied to mediocrity. Excuses sound reasonable. They sound justified. They even sound responsible. Sometimes, but they're nothing more than permission slips to stay small. And the truth is, every excuse has a hidden payoff. That's why you hold on to it. Maybe the excuse keeps you safe from trying and failing. Or maybe it keeps you comfortable in the known instead of venturing into the unknown. Maybe it keeps you from facing the scary truth that you actually do have the power to change your circumstances, but if you admitted that, you'd have to act. Every excuse is a way of giving away your power to circumstances, to other people, to luck, to timing. It's saying, I am not the cause, I am the effect. But champions of life, those who succeed at the highest levels, take back that power. They refuse to live as victims of their environment. They understand that circumstances are temporary, but choices are forever. Excuses come in many disguises. I don't have time. I don't have money. I wasn't born into the right family. I didn't get the right education. I'm too young. I'm too old. I've heard them all, and I've seen people with far greater obstacles rise above them. I've seen immigrants arrive with nothing, not even speaking the language, and build empires. I've seen single mothers with 3 jobs create lives of abundance. I've seen people with physical disabilities achieve things most able-bodied people wouldn't even attempt. So the question is never really, can it be done? The question is, am I willing to stop telling myself stories about why I can't? Because as long as you tell yourself you can't, you won't. Not because it's impossible, but because you've hypnotized yourself into inaction. The moment you stop making excuses, you reclaim your freedom. You reclaim the ability to write a new story. Instead of saying, I can't because, you start saying, how can I? That one shift in language opens your brain to possibility. And once your brain is searching for solutions, it will find them. That's how you move from victim to creator. That's how you move from wishing to achieving. And here's what ties all 3 together: fear of failure, seeking approval, and making excuses. They all come from the same root, giving your power away. Fear gives your power to imagine futures. Approval gives your power to other people. Excuses give your power to circumstances. When you stop these 3 things, you take your power back. You become the author of your life instead of the actor reading someone else's script. You step into the driver's seat instead of being a passenger, hoping the road takes you somewhere good. Success is not complicated. It's simple, but it's not easy. And the reason it's not easy is because your brain is not designed for success. Your brain is designed for survival. Thousands of years of evolution have conditioned you to avoid risk, to stay in comfort zones, to seek acceptance from the tribe, and to find excuses when danger seems too great. These instincts kept our ancestors alive, but they will keep you stuck if you don't consciously override them. The people who create extraordinary results in life are the ones who stop letting survival wiring dominate their choices. They retrain their nervous system, their emotions, and their habits to align with growth instead of fear. So imagine right now what your life would look like if you completely eliminated fear of failure. What would you attempt? Or what business would you start? Who would you approach? What risks would you take? Most people live their entire life never answering that question because the moment the possibility of failure enters their mind, they shrink back into safety. They stay in the job they hate because at least it pays the bills. They stay in a relationship that's unfulfilling because at least they're not alone. They stay in the same city, the same routines, the same patterns, because at least they know what to expect. But comfort is the enemy of growth. Nothing grows in comfort. You grow in the unknown, in the stretch, in the moments where you don't know if you'll sink or swim, but you dive in anyway. That's where life comes alive. I remember talking to someone at an event who told me, Tony, I've wanted to start my own business for years, but I'm afraid I'll fail. I'm afraid I'll waste money. I'm afraid I'll look stupid. I'm afraid I'll disappoint my family. And I looked at him and said, what's the bigger failure? Trying and falling short, or never trying and spending the rest of your life wondering what could have been? He got quiet, and tears came to his eyes because he realized he was already living in failure, the failure of never giving himself the chance. That's the hidden cost of fear. It's not just what you avoid, it's the life you never taste, the potential you never touch, the contribution you never make. Now think about approval seeking. How many dreams have been suffocated because someone was too worried about what others might think? How many innovations never saw the light of day because someone didn't want to look foolish? How many talents have been buried because someone was too busy trying to fit in instead of stand out? When you live for approval, you live in a prison without bars. You hand over the keys of your self-worth to other people, and they don't even know they're holding them. You let strangers on the internet determine your mood. You let colleagues determine your ambition. You let family members determine your choices. And the tragedy is, most of those people aren't even thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. The approval you crave so desperately is often from people who are too wrapped up in their own fears and insecurities to give it to you consistently. So what do you do instead? You root yourself in your own values. You decide, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is what matters to me. And you live from that place unapologetically. Because when your inner compass is strong, external approval becomes irrelevant. People may agree or disagree, but it doesn't shake you because you know you're aligned with your truth. And when you live from that level of authenticity, something amazing happens. You attract the right people. You attract the people who resonate with your energy, your vision, your courage. You stop wasting time trying to convince the wrong people, and you start magnetizing the right ones. Excuses, on the other hand, are like termites. They eat away at your potential slowly, silently, until one day you realize the foundation of your life is weak. You justify why you're not where you want to be, and those justifications feel protective, but in reality, they're destructive. Every time you say, I can't, you reinforce a belief of limitation, and beliefs shape destiny. If you keep telling yourself you don't have time, you'll never find time. If you keep telling yourself you don't have resources, you'll never see the resources around you. If you keep telling yourself you're not ready, you'll never be ready. The mind obeys the commands you give it, consciously or unconsciously. So if you want to succeed, you must stop feeding your mind excuses and start feeding it possibilities. I remember years ago meeting a man who told me, Tony, I've always wanted to write a book, but I just don't have the time. And I asked him, how much time do you spend watching TV? He said, probably 2 hours a night. I said, that's 14 hours a week. That's 700 hours a year. That's the equivalent of 17 full work weeks. Or you could write a book every year with that time. He looked stunned because he realized the excuse wasn't about time. It was about priority. And that's the truth for most of us. It's not that you don't have time. It's that you haven't made it a priority. It's not that you don't have resources. It's that you haven't gotten resourceful. It's not that you're not ready. It's that you haven't decided to start. Success begins where excuses end. The moment you stop giving yourself a way out, you start finding a way forward. Burn the boats, eliminate the backup plan, or commit fully, because when you have no excuses left, all that remains is results. And the beautiful part is, once you stop making excuses, you start seeing how much power you actually have. You realize you're capable of far more than you gave yourself credit for. You realize that most limitations are self-imposed. You realize that the life you want is not on the other side of luck or timing or someone else's permission. It's on the other side of your own decision to stop settling. Fear Approval seeking and excuses are like weeds. If you don't pull them out by the roots, they'll keep growing back. And the longer you let them grow, the deeper their roots go. So this isn't about managing them, this is about eliminating them. It's about drawing a line in the sand and saying no more. I refuse to let fear dictate my choices. I refuse to let approval seeking hijack my identity. I refuse to let excuses rob me of my destiny. And when you make that decision, not once, but every day, you change the trajectory of your life. Because success is not one big decision, it's a series of small decisions made consistently. Every day you choose courage over fear, authenticity over approval, action over excuses. You build a life of success brick by brick. Or let me tell you, the human spirit is unstoppable once it decides. History proves it. Look at Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison and came out to lead a nation to reconciliation. Look at Helen Keller, who couldn't see or hear, but became a world-renowned author and activist. Look at Elon Musk, who risked his entire fortune multiple times to push the boundaries of what's possible in technology and space travel. These are people who faced enormous obstacles, enormous criticism, enormous opportunities to make excuses, but they didn't. They stopped the three things we're talking about. They refused to live in fear. They refused to live for approval. They refused to live in excuses. And because of that, they changed the world. Now, you may not be aiming to change the entire world, but you can change your world. And when you change your world, you inevitably impact others. Maybe your dream is to create financial freedom for your family. Maybe it's to build a business that serves your community. Maybe it's to pursue an art form that inspires people. Maybe it's simply to live a life that when you look back, you can say, I gave it everything. Or whatever your vision is, it's worth more than your fear. It's worth more than someone else's opinion. It's worth more than any excuse you've been telling yourself. But you have to decide. You have to decide that the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of changing. You have to decide that you're done being a passenger in your own life. You have to decide that enough is enough. The truth about success is that it doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who act. It comes to those who are willing to step out when it's uncomfortable, who are willing to keep going when it's uncertain, who are willing to risk looking foolish because they know growth lives on the other side of risk. And here's the irony, people spend their whole lives trying to avoid looking foolish. But the only foolish thing is living a life less than you're capable of. The only foolish thing is dying with your music still in you. Every single day you wake up with potential that most people will never tap into simply because they won't stop the three habits that sabotage them: fear of failure, approval seeking, and excuses. So let's get practical. How do you stop letting fear of failure run your life? You face it, you lean into it, you reframe it. Fear is energy, it's adrenaline. It's your body preparing you for action. But most people interpret that energy as a signal to retreat instead of a signal to step forward. What if you felt that tightness in your chest, that quickened heartbeat, and instead of saying, oh no, I'm scared, you said, this means I'm about to grow. This means I'm stepping into a new level. This means I'm alive. Fear is not the enemy. It's the compass pointing you toward your next breakthrough. If you're not feeling fear regularly, you're not growing, you're stuck. And if you're stuck, you're slowly dying. Because life is not meant to be static. It's meant to be dynamic, ever expanding, ever unfolding. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is the gift of courage. Courage doesn't mean you don't feel fear. It means you feel it and move anyway. You train your nervous system to act despite the discomfort. Every time you do, you build a muscle. And just like going to the gym, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. Pretty soon, what once terrified you becomes normal, and then you stretch to the next level. That's how you grow. That's how you transform fear from a prison guard into a partner. Now, how do you stop seeking approval? You practice radical authenticity. You tell the truth about who you are, what you want, what you believe, without editing yourself to please. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop diluting your light to make others comfortable. You stop asking for permission to be yourself. And yes, it will be uncomfortable at first. You may lose some people. You may be misunderstood. But here's the paradox. When you stop bending to get approval, you actually attract deeper, truer relationships. Because the people who stick around are there for the real you, not the performance. And that's the kind of approval you never have to chase because it's rooted in truth. It's like this. Imagine you're wearing a mask every day. People love the mask, but inside you know they don't know the real you. So even when they approve of you, you don't feel it deeply because they're not approving of you, they're approving of the mask. But when you drop the mask and show up authentically, even if fewer people like you, at least you know the love, respect, and admiration you receive is for the real you. And that is priceless. Excuses are trickier because they feel so rational. But the way to stop making excuses is to get brutally honest with yourself. Instead of saying, I don't have time, admit it's not a priority. Instead of saying, I don't have resources, admit I haven't figured out how to be resourceful. Instead of saying, I can't, admit I'm choosing not to. When you change your language, you expose the truth. And once you see the truth, you can no longer hide behind the illusion. It forces you to take responsibility, and responsibility is the birthplace of empowerment. So what's the antidote to excuses? Ownership, radical, no-nonsense ownership of your life. Ownership of your time, ownership of your choices, ownership of your results. That doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything. It means claiming your power in everything. It means shifting from life happens to me to life happens for me. It means refusing to wait for conditions to be perfect and instead deciding to create progress no matter what. Because let's be real, conditions will never be perfect. If you're waiting for the perfect time, you'll wait forever. The only time you have is now, and the only person who can change your life is you. I can't tell you how many people I've met who tell me, Tony, I want a better life, I want more success, I want more joy. But when you look at their actions, they're still bowing down to fear, still seeking approval, still making excuses. Wanting is not enough. Everyone wants, but very few decide. Success begins the moment you decide, truly decide, to stop tolerating your own limitations, or to stop indulging in the comfort of fear, to stop handing your power to the opinions of others, to stop feeding yourself excuses. And here's the key. When you truly decide, you cut off all other options. That's what the word decide means, to cut away. You cut away fear as the driver. You cut away approval as the compass. You cut away excuses as the language. And when you do, the path to success becomes clear. Think about your own life right now. Where are you letting fear dictate your choices? Or where are you holding back because you're afraid of failing, afraid of being judged, afraid of falling short? Where are you chasing approval instead of chasing alignment? Where are you performing for others instead of living for yourself? Where are you making excuses about time, money, age, circumstances that are keeping you from moving forward? Be honest, because honesty is the first step to freedom. Awareness is the first step to change. And once you see it, don't just acknowledge it, act. Replace fear with action. Replace approval with authenticity. Replace excuses with ownership. And do it again and again until it becomes who you are. Because you don't get what you want in life, you get what you tolerate. If you tolerate fear running your life, it will. If you tolerate approval seeking, it will drain you. If you tolerate excuses, they will multiply. But if you raise your standard and say, I will no longer tolerate these patterns, everything changes. I've seen people transform their lives in moments when they stop tolerating these three things. I've seen people walk out of jobs they hated for decades and finally pursue their passion. I've seen people release toxic relationships and finally step into self-love. I've seen people stop making excuses about their health and finally create the vitality they thought was impossible. And it always starts with the same shift. Stop giving power to fear, approval, and excuses. There's a story I love about a man who was asked, what's the secret to success? He said, it's simple. Stop doing what doesn't work. That's what this entire message is about. Stop doing what doesn't work. Fear doesn't work. Approval seeking doesn't work. Excuses don't work. If they worked, you'd already have the life you want, but they don't. They never have, and they never will. What works is courage. What works is authenticity. What works is ownership. And those are available to you right now. So don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait for some magical sign. Don't wait until conditions are perfect. Stop now. Stop giving your life to fear. Stop giving your energy to approval. Stop giving your dreams to excuses. Decide now that you're done living small. Decide now that you're done playing safe. Or decide now that you're done betraying yourself. Decide now that you're ready to step into your power, your potential, your destiny. The moment you decide to stop tolerating fear, stop chasing approval, and stop making excuses, you begin to live from a place of power. And here's what happens. You start to feel alive again. You start to wake up in the morning with energy instead of dread, You start to see possibilities where before you only saw problems. You start to take risks that once seemed terrifying, and those risks open doors that lead to opportunities you could never have imagined. You realize that the walls that confined you were never real. They were made of thoughts, beliefs, and stories you kept telling yourself. And if you can create those walls, you can tear them down. Fear will still show up, don't get me wrong. You're human, and your nervous system will always try to protect you. Or approval seeking will still try to creep in because your brain wants belonging. Excuses will still whisper because comfort is seductive. But the difference now is that you'll recognize them for what they are. You'll see them instead of letting them control you. You'll smile and say, thank you, but no. You'll take action anyway. You'll stand in your truth anyway. You'll claim ownership anyway. And that's the difference between those who succeed and those who stay stuck. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to bow to it. Not the absence of judgment, but the refusal to be defined by it. Not the absence of obstacles, but the refusal to be limited by them. Success isn't just about money or recognition or status. Those are byproducts. True success is about freedom. Freedom to be who you are. Freedom to do what you love. Freedom to live life on your terms. And you cannot have that freedom if you're chained to fear, if you're shackled to approval, if you're imprisoned by excuses. Freedom requires courage. Freedom requires authenticity. Freedom requires responsibility. And when you live that way, success in the external world follows because success loves clarity, success loves boldness, success loves consistency. Imagine your life 1 year from now if you stop these three things completely. Imagine how much further you'd be in your goals if you never let fear stop you from acting. Imagine how much more peace you'd have if you stopped caring about other people's opinions and started living your own truth. Imagine how much more progress you'd make if you stopped making excuses and started taking ownership. Now stretch it further. Imagine 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. That's the power of compounded change. Every day you stop feeding these patterns, you plant seeds of a new destiny. And over time, those seeds grow into forests of abundance, achievement, and fulfillment. But the opposite is also true. If you keep feeding fear, if you keep chasing approval, if you keep making excuses, 1 year from now, you'll still be in the same place or worse because nothing stays the same. Life is either progressing or regressing, growth or decay. So the cost of not stopping these three things is not neutral. It's devastating. It's waking up a decade from now with regret. It's realizing you traded your potential for comfort, your authenticity for approval, your dreams for excuses. And regret is the heaviest burden a human can carry. Don't let that be your story. Here's the good news. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to eradicate these patterns overnight. You just need to make the decision today and then recommit tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. You stop them one choice at a time. You stop fear by acting in spite of it. You stop approval seeking by speaking your truth once, then again, then again. You stop excuses by catching yourself in the language of limitation and flipping it to the language of ownership. Every little choice matters because small hinges swing big doors. Over time, those choices create habits. Those habits create identity, and that identity creates destiny. Think of the people you admire most. They weren't born fearless. They weren't born immune to criticism. They weren't born without obstacles. They simply made different choices again and again until it became who they were. They trained themselves to stop indulging in patterns that kept them small, and they replaced them with patterns that expanded their lives. You can do the same. You have the same raw material inside you: strength, creativity, resilience, courage. It's not a question of whether you have it. It's a question of whether you'll use it. And using it begins with stopping what drains it. So I challenge you today, not tomorrow, not next week, today, identify one area of your life where fear has been holding you back and take action. Or identify one area where you've been chasing approval and tell the truth instead. Identify one excuse you've been making and own it, just one. And then do it again tomorrow and watch what happens. Watch how quickly momentum builds. Watch how your confidence grows. Watch how your results compound. And as you do, remember this: success is not something you pursue, it's something you attract by the person you become. When you stop giving energy to fear, approval, and excuses, you become a person of courage, authenticity, and ownership. And that person naturally attracts success because success is drawn to clarity, strength, and action. So don't chase success. Become the kind of person who success can't resist. At the end of your life, you won't measure yourself by the fears you avoided, or the approval you received, or the excuses you justified. You'll measure yourself by the risks you took, the truth you lived, and the ownership you claimed. You'll measure yourself by whether you squeezed the juice out of life, whether you loved fully, whether you contributed deeply, whether you grew constantly, and all of that is possible when you stop the three things that steal it from you. So my message to you is simple. Stop being a prisoner of fear. Stop being a slave to approval. Stop being a victim of excuses. Step into your power. Step into your truth. Step into your destiny. Because the world doesn't need another person living small. The world needs you at your full strength. The world needs your gifts, your vision, your courage, and you can give it if you stop what's been stopping you. Right now, this moment is your invitation. Not tomorrow, not someday, not when you feel ready. Now, stop the three things and start living the life you were made for, because success is waiting, freedom is waiting, fulfillment is waiting, and so is the real you.